Thank you, Tara. Hello, everybody. As Tara said, I'm Leonie Watson, and if I haven't met you before, I'll tell you that I'm blind, and that means I use a screen reader to do, well, pretty much everything that involves technology. There's a screen reader on my laptop, there's one on my phone, another on my watch, there's even one on my TV. And although I'm not a gamer myself these days, increasingly, as Tara mentioned, and you will know, there are screen readers available in games. But as a regular, everyday, for everything screen reader user, I'm going to let you into a little secret. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, whether I'm reading an email from a friend, scrutinizing a business contract, browsing for groceries or clothes, writing this talk, everything sounds the same. And quite frankly, between you and me, I'm bloody bored with the whole thing, really. So I'd like to just share some of my thoughts around the experience of using a screen reader from the synthetic speech quality point of view. And to do that, I'll explain, in case you're not aware of this, that all screen readers, wherever they are, use something called text-to-speech. Somewhere there will be text, and the TTS engines, as they're known, will convert that into synthetic speech. It might be the text in the body of an email. It might be the text that's coded into a game that identifies an item that the player can pick up, for example. Somewhere there will be text, and somewhere it'll be converted into synthetic speech. But text-to-speech engines are not all the same. And one of the big differences comes in the quality of the synthetic speech that they output. To explain a little bit more about this, I'm going to have to tell you a little bit about how humans produce speech. Don't worry, I'll make it as painless as I can. Simply put, to create sound, you have an airflow and you interrupt it. So when we speak, we force air out of our lungs using our diaphragms, ribs, and abdominal muscles. And as the air leaves our bodies, it gets interrupted by our vocal cords. And vocal cords vibrate. And as the airflow hits the vibrating vocal cords, it starts all the air particles vibrating. They bump into the nearby air particles, they start vibrating, and this carries on in a wave or a sound wave until all the air particles, bless them, run out of energy and the sound peters out. What makes this interesting is that your vocal cords don't all vibrate at the same speed. I think that's simple. This has implications for the pitch of your voice, how high or low it is. If your vocal cords were vibrating at 85 times a second, it means the airflow on the way out of your lungs is interrupted 85 times a second, and the pitch of your voice, or the frequency, is 85 hertz. The higher the frequency, the higher your voice. The lower, lower your voice, which makes a certain kind of sense. But there's another factor, and that's volume. Lower frequency voices or lower pitched voices tend to be louder. The noise carries further. The higher pitch, higher frequency voices are not as strong and so not as loud. You will know, many of you I assume, are people who talk and speak in various ways, me on a stage here, everybody in conversation at lunchtime, and you'll know that we're really actually quite good at controlling both the pitch and the volume of our voices. And the things we use to do this are called resonating chambers. And we have several of these. If you close your mouth and hum loudly through your nose kind of area, you'll feel some vibrations just on the bridge of your nose behind yourself there. That's one of your resonating chambers doing its thing. And resonating chambers also are capable of vibrating at different frequencies. So when you decide you want to make your higher pitched voice louder, you adjust the shape of your resonating chambers using your tongue, your mouth, your soft palate, all sorts of other bits and pieces, until the chamber starts vibrating at the same frequency as the bit of your voice you want to make louder. Don't worry, this is all much more probably than you need to know. But the important thing to know is that those resonating chambers all vibrate at between 3 and 5 different frequencies. And those frequencies are known as formants. That's the bit that brings us neatly onto the subject of synthetic speech, and more specifically, one of the earliest forms of synthetic speech known as formant synthesis. Oh, sorry, bear me a second.
Formant synthesis is rule-based. The acoustic characters of speech are extracted from a voice recording, then programmed as rules for recreating the voice as digital audio.
Now, for those of you able to hear that, you'll have noticed that the voice is incredibly artificial and robotic sounding. That's because the rules that formant synthesis is based on are incredibly basic. This is like a really early form of synthetic speech. And if I play you some examples now from a formant text-to-speech engine, specifically Eloquence, this is the one that comes with the JAWS screen reader and others like it, you'll get a sense of just how rudimentary those rules for changing different voice characteristics really are.
Hello, this is the voice of Reed.
This is the voice of Shelley. This is the voice of Bobby.
This is the voice of Rocco. This is the voice of Glenn.
This is the voice of Sandy. This is the voice of Grandma.
And this is the voice of Grandpa.
So to create all of those different voices, all that's happening is the pitch is being changed. It's a very old-fashioned idea that if you have a feminine sounding voice, you increase the pitch. If it's male, it sounds a bit lower. Do not get me started on the absence of gender non-binary voices in text-to-speech. There's a massive gap there. That's a fight to be had, but not inside a 15-minute talk, I'm sorry. What came next, though, in terms of text-to-speech is something known as concatenative. Oh, sorry, no, that's not what came next at all. I want to make another point, sorry. And that's the fact that I actually still use that formant synthesis. I use it with my screen readers on pretty much every device I've got. And the reason, quite evidently, isn't speech quality, it's performance. The average English-speaking conversation happens at about 150 words a minute. I, on a normal day, listen to my screen reader at about 500 words a minute. And I'm not quick at this. There are lots of screen reader users out there, possibly several of you in the audience, who listen a damn sight quicker than I do. But here's the difference.
For millions of years, humans lived just like the animals. Then something happened that unleashed the power of our imagination. We learned to talk. For millions of years, humans lived just like the animals. Then something happened that unleashed the power of our imagination. We learned to talk.
So for all it sounds completely rubbish, formant synthesis is really good at speeds. It doesn't lose any clarity once you get used to listening to it. The words still come out fully formed, they're clipped, they're precise, and you can go a lot faster than that without losing any of the intelligibility. Which I will now come on to what came next in text-to-speech evolution. Concatenative text-to-speech is what came next.
Concatenative synthesis uses a voice recording that's broken down into tiny chunks. The chunks are then reconstructed from a database to form the synthesized speech.
So you might think that because they start with real human recordings, concatenative synthesis was the next best thing since sliced bread. It really wasn't, though. Although some poor soul got to sit in a recording library for hours at a time, even so, it still isn't possible to capture every nuance, every emotion, every reaction that the human voice is capable of. It's also pretty rubbish in terms of performance. It takes time to construct words and sentences out of those tiny little building blocks. And that means that the synthetic speech quality is a bit like listening to somebody who mumbles. What came next, though, was parametric synthesis, and this took an enormous step forward.
Parametric synthesis uses a statistical model. The parameters of speech are extracted from a voice recording, then hidden Markov models, HMM, modify the parameters based on the text to be spoken.
So the voice quality got much closer to human realistic. And the reason is that although this is still artificial, and although it still uses rules or parameters, they're a lot more sophisticated than those available in formant text-to-speech engines. The use of hidden Markov models, essentially machine learning, lets it take educated guesses. So it'll scrutinize the text to be converted to speech, look for patterns it recognizes, and then use what it thinks is the appropriate emotion or inflection or change of tone based on that text. No, it can't understand what it's reading. It just looks for word patterns and takes it from there. But there was yet another kind of evolution, which really brings us up to the current moment in time. And that is the advent of neural text-to-speech engines.
Neural TTS uses artificial neural networks trained on huge amounts of voice data. The neural networks learn the relationships between text and speech, and the result is voices that sound very close to human speech.
And they really do. And that isn't even one of the better examples available these days. Even someone like me who listens to a lot of synthetic speech for a lot of different reasons struggles now to properly identify when something is synthetic or not these days. And the difference, of course, is the massive amounts of data that these things can be fed. They're all processed in the cloud, and like many things that have neural machine learning capability behind them, they take a lot of oomph, but what they produce is really quite remarkable. And they make something else quite remarkable possible too, and that's the ability to clone someone's voice.
Neural TTS can transfer the prosodic characteristics of one voice to another, making it possible to synthesize speech in the voice of a particular speaker.
And that clone of my voice took me about 10 minutes of recording data to create. Doesn't quite sound like me, I don't think, but it's near as damn it and terrifying as that might be. Why am I telling you this? Well, because I mentioned that I was bored with listening to the same old screen reader. My second secret of the day is that one day I want Jean-Luc Picard to be able to read my email to me. Really, you think I'm joking? I've been saying this for 25 years. Nobody believes me, but it's true. I really do. How awesome would that be to just choose the voice that stuff was read to you in? But that's a little way off yet. And why? The answer is because a lot of this neural TTS level capability is still processed in the cloud. And that presents us with a couple of problems. One is privacy. If you've got to send all that text to be converted into synthetic speech off into the cloud somewhere, that literally means everything you read or use or do as a screen reader user. Your personal data, the personal data of the people you are emailing with or talking about, the contents of your contracts, your non-disclosure agreements, whatever it might be, even your naughty messages from your lover or your spouse, the whole bloody lot gets shipped off into the cloud, converted, and then sent back to you. And never mind, GDPR and quite sensible legal concerns, there's a lot of just personal privacy concerns in that happening. And then, of course, there's the network itself. If you depend on your screen reader being available, you have to guarantee that the screen reader can produce speech for you. So depending on a network connection just isn't viable. Even if it was, and we could guarantee a network connection at all times, the latency, the turnaround time of shipping all the text off to the cloud, having it processed and sent back to your laptop or your device and presented back to you as your interface, it's going to take time, maybe just a couple of milliseconds, maybe more. But think back to that performance slide, and I'm too impatient. I'm not going to hang around and wait for that to happen. The good news is that more of this is actually starting now to move to on-device. Microsoft took the first step. They recently introduced what they call their natural voices. They're basically their neural TTS voices from their Azure TTS API, but they're available on device. So if you use Narrator, the Windows 11 screen reader version, you can actually now have really good human quality voices with the privacy of your own laptop or device and no network or latency problems. So what about in-game? Well, I'll just wrap up by saying I've shared with you my examples, a couple of my secrets that really keep to yourselves. I don't really need everybody knowing that I want to listen to Jean-Luc Picard all the time, but they are just my experiences. So when it comes to game screen readers, the one message I want to leave you with is make them customizable. Unfortunately, there's some great trailblazers out there doing that. Diablo 4, of course, from Blizzard, and a little before it, Assassin's Creed from Ubisoft are two really good examples. You can choose whether you want to use your own screen reader. You can use the integrated screen reader. If you prefer speed of voice over some other feature, you can change that too. If you prefer to choose a voice that perhaps meshes more with the experience of the game you're playing, you can do that too. Just make it customizable and let gamers who can't see what they're up to listen the way they want to. Thank you very much.